And welcome into the Thursday edition, Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Thursday morning. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Joe Rexrode is back on the program today. Joseph, good morning. How are you?
Doing okay, thanks. I'm down a car, so got that going on here. And I guess maybe the little smashing into a tree affected me more than I thought it did at first yesterday, but hanging in there.
So for those who don't know, Rexrode did get in a car accident yesterday, as you just heard, and smashed into a tree. So we'll take your well wishes for him on our text line. I have heard, Joe, it's the second day that really, really gets people more than just the immediate aftermath of it. That next day is really where the pain starts to creep in a little bit.
Yeah, this show could be interesting. I don't know. I feel kind of woozy right now.
That's not good.
Yeah, it will be okay. But I mean, I didn't really, I really didn't get hurt. You just get, for anybody who's been in a car accident, it wasn't even high speed, but it's pretty jarring, just the impact. You're like, man, you're reminded of that we're driving around in death machines here. But yeah,
Well, we're glad you're okay, mainly.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, but I mean, it's my first car accident as a driver in my life, which is pretty good. But also, whenever Katie and I get in arguments about about my driving, which they all make fun of my driving actually for being a grandpa driver, but then sometimes that I'm too aggressive, it really makes no sense. I'm always like, oh yeah, well, who hasn't ever been in an accident? I mean, that's like always my answer. It's really like what, like there's no response you can really give to that. And now I don't have that anymore. I mean, I think it's pretty impressive to go into the 50s.
I agree.
Before doing that, but also like it's just like replayed it a million times, and it's like I still don't understand how I was swerving to hit a deer, but I still don't understand how I ended up in the tree. You know what I mean? It's like, man, I wish I could have a do-over.
Well, I mean, you made it into your 50s without a car wreck. You made it into your 50s without running a car out of gas, too. Like, it's a pretty good run on both things.
Did I? I don't know if that's true.
I'm just assuming. I don't know.
Yeah,
that last one, I'm just assuming.
Yeah, actually, I think maybe a couple times previously that's happened to me, but that's still better than a wreck, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So now, I mean, there's no I just don't have an answer ever again, and I'm the only one who does any driving because as a teenager, I was in two terrible accidents as a passenger. One of which the car flipped in a ditch, and I was seriously told by the EMT, like, I don't know how you're alive.
Jeez.
And because of those accidents as a teenager, I still have a very hard time with anybody else driving me, which is a huge source of frustration in my family too. But it's like, you're not driving me, I'm driving. I always drive.
Right.
So that opens you up to more people ripping your driving. And again, now there's no obvious response. Like, yeah, who here has is a perfect driver? It's over.
It is sad. But hey, if we're going by the percentages here, you started driving when you were 16 and it took you into your 50s. So I'm feeling pretty good that, by the odds, it'll be a long time again before you have to deal with this. That's good.
You would think so. I mean, driving some yesterday after this, and boy, talk about grandpa driving. Both have like the 3.9 thing and just like
those long exaggerated turns. It's like we're making this slow turn here, baby.
Yeah, and I hope the deer, and I think it was a deer and maybe a baby.
Yeah,
I hope they live the best possible deer life from here.
I hope they do too.
Because I mean, look, and I've had a lot of people say it, and I don't disagree. It's like in those situations, you just have to. The deer is better than a tree, man. And so I hear that, I do, but I mean, it's still a pretty good chance that the car's messed up and in the shop today, right? Even if I did that.
Yes.
And so, as it turns out, the deer, I think it was snuck behind the car, ran off into the field. And so I hope that it's absolutely this gift is maximized by that deer or those deer.
Hope they are grazing on some nice food today, wherever they may be.
Exactly. Like graze like some other farters,
We, we got a lot of deer around here, man. So like, I'm not making this up. Like 2 weeks ago, we were rolling out of my driveway to go to church, and I looked in my ditch, and it's just like, oh, there's a dead deer there that somebody just smoked on the road. So
Wow.
yeah, that was 2 weeks ago. So it was in my ditch.
Yeah, well, and so also there's a lot of construction around here, which has been an upheaval. But the crazy thing about this is there's a certain area on my drive in where that they are there a lot, and I'm always super careful. Like I'm ready. I had never seen any at this particular place. So that was another part of this. I mean, whatever. It's all a split second thing anyway.
Yeah.
But it's still like I've never seen them over here. Now it's right next to a construction spot that's popping right now. So there's another lesson too. Is just like you just never know where things might get displaced and animals might end up in weird places.
Well, again, the main thing is we're glad you're okay.
Thank you.
Glad you're all good.
Not all good, but yeah.
Those situations can sometimes be way worse than that. So glad that you're okay. Ian Safar, how are we doing this morning? What's going on?
Oh, I'm doing good, thanks. I did not go that long without my first wreck. So yeah, good job, Joe.
I didn't either. I think I was like 20, maybe 21. Some lady decided to pull out from a stop sign, like as oncoming traffic was going on. That was fun.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Ian?
Yeah, I went off the side of the road once. And then I rear-ended a lady once. But that's been about it. It's been probably two that were pretty bad. And they were in my teens when I was in high school. I haven't really had any major anything since then. So, yeah.
It's almost like it doesn't even count,
Well, yeah, back then,
young.
You just don't realize it, but you take your eye off the road for even a second or two, it can happen pretty quickly. So sometimes you have to learn your lessons the hard way, and I always seem to do that, and they cost me a lot of money.
We got a lot to get into on the program here today. We will get into a contract situation with Terry McLaurin and the Washington Commanders coming up here in just a few minutes. Joe's got a lot of thoughts on some college sports that we're going to get into in the 7 o'clock hour. I've got a Titan scenario with wide receiver that I'd like to play out a little bit later in the program. We'll do all that. The best and worst things in sports coming up at 6:45. The Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode at 7:45. We'll take your thoughts in the meantime. 615-737-1025. Nashville SC gets another win last night. That's 15 in a row of an unbeaten streak for Nashville SC. So the streak lives on last night in the U.S. Open Cup, and they win by a score of 5-2 against DC United. So another home game last night, another win. They're on the road at Miami this weekend, back in MLS action. So that'll be fun. Anytime they play Miami is obviously a lot of eyeballs on that game. So 15 straight matches unbeaten against all competitions. It's not just strictly MLS matches like last night's was a U.S. Open Cup. So strictly, 15 in a row just in general for Nashville SC. So they continue to win. And the goals came in a hurry last night. They went 5-2, and I think they were down 2-0 in that game.
Yeah.
And just came all the way back. So they just continue, Joe, to just rake it in offensively, and apparently you just can't beat Nashville SC right now.
I mean, this could be the first professional championship in Nashville.
Yeah.
Now, if it is, and will the Titans and Preds fans who don't follow soccer acknowledge it?
Acknowledge it?
Celebrate it.
That's a good celebrate. I think we may be. If you're not following soccer, will you celebrate it? I don't know. I'd like to see. I'd like to see it get down to those games, and then we'll find out.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what they're doing though, because it was 2-0, like you said, nil,
Yes.
and it's like, okay, well then everything comes to an end, and sometimes it's not a bad thing to have a stinker every once in a while. Then all of a sudden it's just like a avalanche. It's like, man, I mean, they're on one, and like they almost seem inevitable at this point.
You're saying good offense from Brian Callahan? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, there is a Brian Callahan. Maybe this is the summer of Brian Callahan. It's like the summer of George. This is the summer of Brian Callahan. We'll find out. Summer doesn't end until September 21st. And the Titans could be undefeated, and we could be two Brian Callahans could be the toast of Nashville by then.
That's true. It is true. So congratulations to Nashville SC. 15 matches in a row where they've been unbeaten, and we'll see if they can keep it going coming up this weekend. A very interesting situation brewing in Washington that some Titans fans have their eye on. We'll get into that coming up next as well. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Joe, still around the NFL as we're a couple of weeks out from training camp. Still a couple of interesting contract situations to monitor here. Obviously, TJ Watt in Pittsburgh and the dissatisfaction with lack of progress on his deal. I mean, Pittsburgh's doing everything else to go all in, right? So I guess at some point they're going to land a TJ Watt deal here, but at this moment, that has not yet happened. So we'll see what happens on that front. It's an interesting situation in Washington with Terry McLaurin. Obviously, Terry McLaurin has been a really good player there for a long time, largely with not much help around him, largely with not great quarterback play around him. He still found a way to put up good numbers and be productive. And now they've got Jaden Daniels, and we saw what they did last year with a trip to the NFC Championship game. And there's a really interesting piece on CBS Sports that friend of the show, Joel Corey, put together about kind of the agent side of this and the contract dispute between Washington and Brandon Ayuk and exactly what he's looking for. And look, a lot of it, I'm not going to sit here and go over because it's deep into the weeds on some of the numbers stuff. So I'd encourage you to check that part of it out on CBS Sports. There's a lot of comps, a lot of numbers that are involved with all of it. But I will read kind of the last couple of graphs here, Joe, that kind of sum things up. Talking about Terry McLaurin, it says, quote, taking everything into consideration, it's hard to envision a realistic scenario where McLaurin accepts less than Brandon Ayuk's $30 million per season in an extension, even though there is an age difference between the two. Ayuk signed a 4-year, $120 million extension with the 49ers containing $76 million in guarantees. And out of the $76 million, $45 million was fully guaranteed. And Ayuk was 26 when he signed. By the way, Terry McLaurin will be 30 coming up in September. So there's the age difference there. Says Dan Quinn might start singing a different tune about McLaurin if the contract impasse can't be broken by the time the veterans report to training camp on July 22nd. It'll be interesting to see whether McLaurin would be willing to incur the mandatory $50,000 fine for each day of training camp missed in a holdout or stage a hold in where he reported to training camp to avoid the fine but did not practice. So long story short, there's still been not much progress on the Terry McLaurin front. He's going to be 30 coming up in September. You heard Joe Corey kind of lay it out there of what he thinks Terry McLaurin is going to be willing to accept, and that's somewhere in the $30 million per year range as a 30-year-old coming up. So what do you make of all that, Joe? And we'll get to what I know some Titans fans are hoping happens here in just a few minutes.
Well, first of all, I feel like lately we've had a lot of athletes we talk about, and it's like, wow, I actually thought he was older than that. Terry McLaurin being 30, I had the opposite reaction. Being like, really? He's already 30? My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things where he's really good. I don't think he's as good as, he's probably going to get paid, but that happens. That's what happens in the league. Just the place they're in, it's like you don't want to mess that up. That's the thing. Sometimes that change. It's like Watt. Like, first of all, if you're the Steelers, I think you need to sign Watt anyway. That would be a priority. But especially if you do what you just did, it's absurd to even consider that you would screw that up, right? When you have clearly changed your philosophy to this go for it mode, which again may be a total disaster anyway, but that's what you've done. That is the idea. And like with Washington now, how do you not build on last year? How do you, because first of all, I think they're going to regress some anyway. I think most people expect that. I expect that. Although I'm a big believer in Jaden Daniels, I think there's going to be a little bit of a sophomore step back, kind of like there was in Houston. But if you're them, how do you, after what you did last year, how do you screw that up? I think he's such a key part of them having any chance to, compete for the division and try to build on last year. So it's a really interesting situation.
It is. They've brought in Deebo Samuel, but Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin are not the same type of player. And Deebo Samuel has had a really hard time lately staying healthy. So,
yeah.
Look, maybe he stays healthy in Washington and he ends up being just an absolute beast. And it's exactly what they're looking for. We'll see. We'll see if he can stay healthy this year. But even though those two guys they're different in the way that they play. So, look, I really like Terry McLaurin. I'm interested to see kind of what he's willing to take here and what that ends up looking like. Because, Joe Corey points out in this piece, it's very similar to Houston last year. I mean, if you're Washington, you're trying to take as much advantage as you can of not paying your quarterback huge money right now, right? Like, I mean, CJ Stroud, this is exactly what Houston did last year. They loaded up on offense. They brought in Stephon Diggs. And like some injuries got in their way last year. They loaded up on the defensive side of the ball too. And they weren't quite as good as most people thought they would be last year, even though they still ended up winning the division and winning a playoff game. Washington that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take advantage of Jaden Daniels being cost controlled before they know a few years down the road they're going to have to pay him just an astronomical amount of money. So my thought on that is, Joe, while you're waiting on that, why not just pay your wide receiver and then maybe you're dealing with some pain on the very end of his deal? But I'd be all in on the Terry McLaurin thing right now if I'm Washington.
Yeah, no, it's just hard to justify or explain otherwise. I think you have to be, and he and his agent know that, so it's probably going to end up, better for him than maybe. I mean, again, he's a very good player. I mean, he's a huge part of what they do, but I think they've got Washington in a bind. Nevada Josh says this is Vikings doing the same kind of thing by not building it last year. Well, but last year, clearly, they've told everybody they thought it was a little bit of fool's gold, right? I mean, they let Darnold go. Yeah. I mean,
so they think that JJ McCarthy is just going to be unreal, one of the two.
Or that, exactly. But they're going with the young guy. I think whether they think it's immediate, they certainly think that before long they're going to be in better position at quarterback spot. And if that's true, they're going to be pretty freaking good.
I know Titans fans, and I've seen it, and it is interesting. We'll see what happens. But Titans fans are hoping that Terry McLaurin reaches the point where he just wants out of Washington and he starts to demand a trade. I don't know that I could see it getting there. We're still, training camp hasn't started yet. And so really in these situations, until training camp starts and there's actual pressure on both sides to get a deal done, it's hard to really determine where things are going to go from here. I mean, as Joe Corey points out in this piece, the fine for missing training camp is pretty exorbitant. So is Terry McLaurin actually prepared to do that? Are they far enough apart in their negotiations where there's just they reach a point where they're like, there's no way we're bridging this gap? And if that happens at 30 years old, I know your wide receiver room, as we're going to discuss later, is pretty light. But at 30 years old in September, does it make a ton of sense if you're the Titans to try to make a trade for Terry McLaurin and put a long-term deal together at that point? So I know a lot of Titans fans are monitoring this situation. I still think we're a long, long way away from that being a realistic possibility.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the Titans in the state there, and even though, of course, they hope this year that so many things come together, and in this league, as we've talked about, you can go from terrible to pretty good in the snap of a finger. But man, two high-priced receivers in their 30s, it just doesn't seem to make sense. It doesn't make sense to me for the Titans right now. Now, if you're feeling rough about all these young guys and everything like that, then maybe that changes things, and you could still say, yeah, but like in a year from now, what if you had that tandem for Cam Ward? What would that look like? So I hear that, but it still just doesn't sit right with me.
No, it doesn't sit right with me. And again, like as Skyler points out, why would Terry McLaurin waste his time on the Titans? Also, why would the Titans trade for him just to go 5-12 this year at best? So Skyler down on the Titans. I mean, I guess theoretically it could reach a point with Washington where, again, they're so far apart in their negotiations that he wants out. Now, I still, there's no evidence that that's the case right now, that he's just like on the doorstep of demanding out of Washington. And I think McLaurin realizes too that they did just go to the NFC title game, and they do potentially have somebody pretty special at the quarterback position. And he is someone who has gone through it to get to this point, right? Like he has been a part of a lot of losing over the years to get to this point. So I can't imagine the idea of potentially putting that at risk and ending up somewhere, frankly, like the Titans, who you don't have any idea what their future is going to look like. Maybe it does end up being great with Cam Moore, but it could also be a total disaster. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of appetite for that right now.
Yeah, I think some people are excited about Cam Ward and could see it working out, but I would think that there's a lot of receivers in this league that would love to play with Jaden Daniels. I mean, especially because the way he extends plays, you get some big plays out of a scrambled drill that some quarterbacks just it's not even an option. I mean, I would think that continue to play with Jaden Daniels would be a big draw. It's something I'd be talking up on the Washington side of the table too. I mean, they're gonna have to pay him, but yeah, a chance to win, a chance to keep playing with that guy, you would think that would be those would be two big things that he would put on the pro side of the list.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. Our boy Frank Schwab at Yahoo Sports, friend of the show, put out something yesterday that I really like, but I had one big problem with the way that it ended, and we'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game. 1025 The Game is teamed up with Pella Windows and the Nashville Humane Association for a puppy pet adoption this Saturday at Pella, which is at 277 Mallory Station Road in Cool Springs from 10 until noon. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com/events. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Thursday morning. We will have the best and worst things in sports coming up at 6:45. So we'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Our buddy Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports, friend of the show, put out a very interesting piece at Yahoo yesterday. You know, it's 2025, Joe, so we're going to see a lot of this throughout the course. We have seen it this year. We'll see more of it as the year goes on of, the 25 greatest this or that, 25 greatest teams, 25 greatest players, all these. I think the NHL did like their quarter century teams back at the early part of the year. So there's a lot going on with that part of it. And I saw Schwab yesterday at Yahoo put out the 25 greatest teams since 2000. So I was like, okay. Probably going to be a whole lot of Patriots and Chiefs on this list. And guess what? There's a lot of Patriots and Chiefs on the list. I will say it is interesting to go back and look through it. I mean, it's not just straight up Super Bowl winners. Like, for instance, last year's Lions are on this list. They're number 21 on the list, and we know that they lost in the divisional round, but they are on the list. I mean, one team that is not on the list that I could actually make the argument probably has a chance to be is the Titans team in 2000 that ran through the league, went 13-3, won the division, and then got beat by the Ravens in the divisional round. That Ravens team is on this list, and they're relatively high. They're number 11 on the list. So Titans, maybe you could argue a snub on that front. Joe, it's a very fascinating list. I can't say I've got a lot of huge problems with most of it, except, and some people will agree with this, some people will disagree with this. The number one team that Frank Schwab has is the 2007 Patriots, as we know, who went 16-0 and ran through the league that year, and their offense was unbelievable with Brady and Randy Moss and all those things. But they lost in the Super Bowl. And as Schwab points out, and he even says it in his piece here, he says, this is the best team to take the field in the last 25 seasons, maybe any season. Without any doubt, they're the greatest team in NFL history to not wear a wing. But he does acknowledge in this piece here that there will be some people that totally dismiss this because they didn't win the Super Bowl. And count me as one of them, Joe. I don't think you could be the best team of the last 25 years if you didn't end up winning. I have no problem with them being on the list somewhere and being on the list high. But I don't think you could be number one if you didn't actually win the championship that year. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. And that makes this piece a heck of a source for arguing for sure. And they were dominant. I mean, football, like basketball, think about like college basketball, you get the, one and done nature of the NCAA tournament, great teams that should have won championships, they lose all the time. To me, football, I mean, I know it's just one game, anything can happen, but man, I usually it's a little bit more reliable than that, when the best teams win, especially if they're a dominant, great team. And again, that was, but like, how does that last huge bit of information not factor into this, right? Like, I mean, they only played was that their 19th game of the season or their 20th? What were they going into that game?
That was 19. Yeah.
So they were 18-0. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, they won the 2 games to get the Super Bowl. So they're 18-0. I understand the idea. I mean, for a lot of that year, you could argue like who else have you seen who was more dominant in the 21st century? But like then in the biggest moment, they lost to actually not a great team. And, that's the thing too. Like the Giants it wasn't like Clash of the Titans there, no pun intended.
Nice.
But they lost to a pretty good Giants team that made an amazing run. So I'm with you. I really, if you're going to do this like he did, and again, the Lions are an example too. But I mean, I would tend to agree. That was a 15-2 hell of a team last year. It's the greatest Lions team of all time. doesn't sniff a championship, which is a perfect representation of that franchise. And it'll probably end up as the greatest of all time, and they'll never get to a Super Bowl. But I would agree, like, if you're going to do that with the Patriots and like the Lions are an example, it's mind-boggling to me. He totally whiffed on the Titans. That Titans team in 2000 was the best team in the NFL. And anybody who watched the NFL in the year 2000 knew that and expected them to win it all. And the Ravens beating them shocked me. It shocked most of the NFL. Yes, by the end of that run, we were like, okay, this Ravens defense is like an all-timer of a defense. No doubt. But like, again, if you're going to do what he just did with the Patriots, I'm telling you that the Titans of 2000 were better than the Ravens of 2000. And that was a wacky game. They just do over one of them. They probably win the game. So I think that's a huge whiff on his part. But people seem to, a lot of these things, including current day things especially, it's like the Titans are not even taken into account.
Well, they don't seem to be taken into account very often. It's funny. They have the exact inverse of this on the list and high on it. So, like, you know, we always talk about 2000 around here and how great that Titans team was and Baltimore coming in and winning. You know, 2019, the Titans did the same thing to them, right? Like the Titans went into Baltimore after the Ravens were 14-2, and they beat them in the divisional round of the playoffs. And Schwab has that 2019 Ravens team number 9 on the list. So it's not like they just barely made the list. Like they're in the top 10. They're number 9 on the list of the greatest teams of the last 25 years. And he got, he mentions, if the Ravens never win a title with Lamar Jackson, this game against the Titans will probably end up being their biggest regret, which you can debate whether or not that's the case. But I mean, that team was unbelievable. They were 14-2. He had an MVP season in Lamar Jackson, and he's got them at number 9 on the list. So those were really the two. When I looked at this list, it's really fascinating. Those were the two big problems I have was the 2000 Titans were not on there, and the 2007 Patriots being the number 1 team of the last 25 years, even though they didn't end up winning the championship. Look, I know there are still people, and there are people listening, and I'm sure people on the text line right now that are like, yeah, I don't care that they didn't win the Super Bowl. Go back and watch them play. They were 18-0 heading into the game. They had Tom Brady throwing the ball all around the yard. They had Randy Moss doing crazy stuff out there at wide receiver. I mean, you can make the case that they're the best team ever. I just, to me, if you're going to be called the best team in the last 25 years in the NFL, I think you need to have at least finished it off with a championship there. So those are really the only two issues I have with this list is the 2000 Titans did not creep their way into the top 25, and the 2007 Patriots, you can't be the number 1 team in the last 25 years if you don't win a championship.
Yeah. But the whole Titans Ravens thing there is, like you said, it's like, then how do you have the 2019 Ravens at high? They were very good. But unlike, like, for example, the Patriots team of that year, or again, even the Titans team of 2000, I didn't feel like it was inevitable the Ravens were going to win it all going to that postseason. I thought they'd beat the Titans in that game when they got their butts completely kicked all over their own home field. Yeah, it's I don't know. I would have asked how old Frank Schwab was in the year 2000.
I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, the top 5 is interesting here. He's got the 2013 Seahawks. So we remember how dominant that Super Bowl run was, especially the Super Bowl game. 2013 Seahawks at number 5. The 04 Patriots at number 4. The 2016 Patriots at number 3. The 2019 Chiefs at number 2, which was the first Super Bowl winning team for the Chiefs in this era. And then the 07 Patriots at number 1. The 2019 Chiefs were really good. I don't know that they were the number 2 team of the last 25 years. I saw that and I was like, really? The 19 Chiefs, the number 2 team? So we'll see. I don't know what happened on that front. 2020, by the way, 2024 Eagles, who just won it, the number 8 team on the list as well, which I agree with. Like, the more you go back and look at that Eagles team, they're pretty darn good. Like, there's not very many weaknesses that Eagles team had. So, again, Frank Schwab, friend of the show. I think we're going to have him on next week as well. So we'll get into some of this with him and obviously some really good information that he has around the league as well on the Titans. So we'll get into all that with him as well. But just a really interesting list. So Titans fans who are stacking up disrespect this offseason, of which I've looked on Twitter the last few days, and I know there are a lot of those, chalk up another one on the list. The 2000 Titans, not a part of the best 25 teams in the last 25 seasons. We will take your best and worst things in sports coming up next, 615-737-1025. Your best things and worst things for this week in the world of sports. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game.
The best and worst of the sports week, now on Robby and Rexrode.
On ESPN.
1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
This is the worst. You look like you're feeling sorry for yourself. I believe in miracles. Yes! Unbelievable.
He's one of one. He is him.
This is a Coke bottle. It's not a crystal ball.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Okay, let's go.
It is that time of the week, time for the best and worst things in the world of sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. Ian Safar, kick us off with your best and worst things in the world of sports.
Okay. We'll go best first. I guess we'll continue with the soccer theme. Nashville SC, the unbeaten streak rolling. Lionel Messi, the first player in MLS history to have 2 goals in 4 consecutive games, which I believe
pretty good.
Which I believe sets up Nashville versus Miami on Saturday, which should be, the potential of them playing hot and Nashville playing hot, potential there for a fun match on Saturday. So that could be pretty cool. And then I'll go worst in sports. Too many betting investigations going on against players these days. I think we were warned about this kind of situation and the biggest fear with the legalization of sports betting, which, which I don't care. I'm all for the legalization of sports betting. That's fine. But I don't know. The fact that all these investigations are going on and teams feel like it's, hurting the integrity of the game. It just seems like such a short-term gain for these players versus the long-term situation, So just it feels like they're kind of getting taken advantage of. And yeah, speaking of which, there's a little second being taken advantage of. I was reading a story about Dallas Turner. And
I saw that.
Yeah, he got apparently maybe swindled out of some money. So scammed. So we'll throw that in there as a worst last minute candidate there.
Joe Rexrode, your best and worst things in the world of sports for this week.
Is it
Kinda.
Hello? Do you have me? Okay. All right. Well, my best, I've got like a cornucopia of stuff from Big 12 Media Days. Big 12 Media Days has been pretty awesome this week. I assume, did you guys hit on the Scott Frost thing yesterday?
Oh, we did, yes.
Okay. Well, a few things from Big 12 Media Days. One, just all the whining about like Texas Tech and money. It's just amazing. Like this thing that they're trying with this NIL Go and Deloitte is such a disaster. And immediately they're all whining about Texas Tech, which I love. I mean, Dion yesterday is like, we need a salary cap. It's great. But also Scott Frost just totally crapping on Nebraska and basically his alma mater and saying like, the whole issue was that he just went to a place where you can't win. I mean, that was truly amazing. Scott Frost had one admittedly amazing season at UCF. It was his second year. They went 13-0. Of course, they claimed national champs, right? He was bad for many years at Nebraska. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens with him there, but man, put the blame on everybody else. I'm putting that as my best. My worst is a pre, and I hope this doesn't turn out to be worse. And I know we're going to talk about it later, but I think today there's a pretty good chance that the D1 board of directors expands the NCAA tournament. And that even the fact that I think that's going to happen right now makes it the worst. I hope that we are talking at some point about how we dodge the bullet again.
Hopefully so. We'll see what happens in that front. We're going to get to that actually here in about 10 minutes. So we'll get to that discussion coming up. My best in sports, Novak Djokovic, baby. He's still going strong. Wimbledon, as Ian knows, has been going on for what seems like a month at this point.
Wimbledon could be my best and worst in the same week, honestly.
It could be. The semifinal match tomorrow between Sinner and Djokovic is going to be awesome. I'm very much looking forward to it. But Djokovic at his age, 38, still being able to, and he's dealt with some injuries over the last year, to be able to still get to this point in Wimbledon and compete the way that he's done it. And each of the last 2 matches, he's fallen behind a set and then just absolutely steamrolled his competition coming back. So you've got a semifinal match of Sinner and Djokovic, and then you've got Carlos Alcaraz taking on the American and Fritz coming up Friday. So you've still got an American in the semifinal, which doesn't happen very often at Wimbledon, so good for him. And then you've got Djokovic at age 38 hitting the semifinal there. So I know Ian Safar, for one, going to be locked in to Wimbledon this weekend as the semifinal matches start tomorrow and we get to the championship coming up on Sunday. So that is my best thing in the world of sports. My worst thing, just getting on the other side of it, NHL free agency sucked. It was awful. I can't remember an NHL free agency that was as bad as that one was. There was almost like zero buzz to it. You know, one of the biggest deals of the day was Mikhail Granlund getting signed. Everybody keeps talking about all these trades that are coming. We ain't seen one of much significance yet. I mean, the Mitch Marner one, you could call it a trade if you want to, but had they not traded him, he was going to go to Vegas and sign there in the next 2 days. So, like, I don't really count that trade. So it's been, to this point, a pretty underwhelming NHL offseason. We'll see if it changes at all with the Predators or anybody else. Because, you know, we talked earlier this week about Chris Johnston saying that he's expecting a lot of trades this offseason. We'll see. I hadn't seen anything yet. So we'll see if the offseason gets any better. By the way, Nick Hague speaking today, newest Nashville Predators defenseman. Nick Perpick spoke the other day. Hague speaking later today. So we'll see what he has to say. But it has been a pretty bad NHL offseason to this point, particularly via free agency, Joe.
Yeah, and Preds fans hope that not only does it get better in trade season overall, but that's because their team is somehow involved in some amazing game-changing trade. So, or maybe an offer sheet?
Maybe. We'll see. We'll see. Trevor says best Nashville SC. They're lighting it up. DC United for the third time this season. They get the second opposing coach fired. You know, when you're getting opposing coaches fired, you're doing a good job. A lot of votes for Nashville SC as the best thing in sports on the text line. A lot of votes for Joe and his Wi-Fi, the worst thing in sports. So we're going to get that figured out at some point here on the program as well. I mean, I'll tell you another thing that is the worst thing in sports. You mentioned the Scott Frost thing. That was hilarious. Joe, I've seen a lot of Tennessee fans freaking out that either Jamad McCoy or Joey Aguilar is not going to be at SEC Media Days last week. I touched on it briefly yesterday, but who cares? I don't care that Jamad McCoy, who's coming off a torn ACL, and Joey Aguilar, who we don't know for sure, by the way, is going to be the starting quarterback at Tennessee. I think he is, but we don't know for sure that he's going to be the starting quarterback, is going to be there at SEC Media Days. And frankly, if you paid attention to Josh Heupel, I don't know why you're surprised by any of this. Like there was no way that Josh Heupel and it was going to bring Joey Aguilar out to SEC Media Days when he's been here for 2 months. There's no way he was going to do that.
Yeah, I think it's fine. The only way to me, almost every time, if you're a coach at these media days, you bring your quarterback. And so I still have a problem last year with no Nico. That was ridiculous to me. I understand, some coaches want to baby their players and all that, but you know what? Come on, man. This is SEC or Big Ten or whatever media days. You bring your quarterback. The whole point of these things is to essentially promote the season ahead. You bring your quarterback. But if you don't have a starter, if you don't know who your starter is, that to me is where it's okay to not do so. So I get it. I don't think people should be upset about that. There's a couple other teams. I don't have the list in front of me that I'm like, come on, bring the freaking quarterback. I'll give Steve Sarkisian credit because some coaches would have done not what he did, and they would have not brought Arch Manning, right? Yep. Like, no. You know what? Give me a freaking break. Arch Manning is the most talked about player in college football this year. Good for him for just saying, yes, here he is. Here he is at SEC Media Days. He can spend a couple hours talking to reporters.
Diego Pavia, going to be talking a lot. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. There's no telling what he might say, and I needed to pour more gasoline on the Tennessee and Vanderbilt fire. Every time he does it, it's awesome. I need more of it. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Joe brought it up, but it looks like we could see yet another change in college sports with the expansion of the NCAA tournament in basketball. What do we make of that? What do you make of that? Is that going to be a total disaster if it happens? We'll get into all that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Thursday morning, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Make sure you check out Nashville's best deal this week. It's Mellow Mushroom. There's no pizza like Mellow Mushroom Pizza, stone-baked with fresh ingredients, next-level imagination, and limitless options for customization. It's a higher order of pizza. You know and love Mellow Mushroom. Get half off a $30 gift card while supplies last at thegamenashville.com/deals. Gift card is good for downtown on Broadway and the Franklin location as well. Joe Rexrode, I'm looking on theathletic.com right now, and there's this big headline that says NCAA tournament expansion is a joke, but sadly, it looks like the punchline is coming. Written by one Joseph Rexrode. Joe, we have been talking about the possibility of this for a while, and it looked for a time like we may have avoided potential NCAA tournament expansion. And yet now it looks like it could happen, and it could happen as soon as today, going from 68 teams potentially to 76. So, Joe, I know what you make of it. Let's discuss it. What do we think of this? How have we gotten to this point? And do you think this is happening?
Yeah, I do. I hope I'm wrong. And I've been pleasantly surprised before, but it just feels like it's happening. Now, look, what was it, about 6 weeks ago down at Destin, Florida? I thought early in that week, I was like, yeah, these people are just going to go along with this stupid Big Ten crap, or the 4-2-2 or 4-4-2-2-1 auto bids, and yay. And it's just, and the coaches, to their credit, argued against it. And I think right now things are trending to where we're not going to have to deal with that. So there's an example of being pleasantly surprised, but it just seems like the momentum is there for this to happen. It could be 72. It's not necessarily going to be 76. Either way, I just, like, you talk about, something that, no one wants, like who wants this? I mean, look, if there's going to be a change, to me, you go back to 64, and you just, that's when, for most of the world, that's when the tournament starts. Right now, we have these first 4 games on Tuesday, Wednesday. I watch them. Sometimes they're good. They're fine. This idea that we're going to turn Tuesday and Wednesday into days like Thursday and Friday are, like, I just think, I think that's short-sighted. I don't think you're going to get the same effect. And frankly, like, people can't take the whole freaking week off to watch hoops,
Right.
I mean, people schedule their vasectomies on Wednesday, and then they sit there icing themselves and watching hoops on Thursday and Friday. You can't get 4 days. I mean, most people aren't giving you 4 days. It's
a heck of a vasectomy.
That would, yeah, snip, snap, snip, snap. Maybe if you're like Michael Scott and it's like your 4th one.
Yeah.
But it's just not. I mean, look, this is, and I know is it about greed? Yes. I mean, there's obviously more money here, but it's really, it's about these power conferences. They get ridiculously big, which is on them. It's nobody else's fault. And so then they want a higher percentage of their teams to be in the tournament. And they just, this is just about loading up with more, more very average power conference teams. If this got a bunch more mid majors in, like, this would get like Indiana Stadium from 2 years ago. You know what? I'd love that. There are some mid majors that miss out, but mostly the beneficiaries of this are going to be the power conference teams. And the biggest thing that really ticks me off about this, Robby, is when Greg Sankey and whoever else sits there and talks about, I mean, look at Division I. It has expanded so much, and yet the tournament has not. The low percentage of teams. All the expansion Division I is just the small leagues that are going to get one bid no matter what are just bigger. So there's more teams competing for one bid. This is not, so it doesn't change the math of what the tournament is. And they're trying to make it seem like, this is limiting access. They're still all going for one bid. That's what it is. And, it's just, that is so disingenuous, and that really bothers me.
I mean, you could make the argument too many teams get in the tournament now. All right. Like, I don't know that I necessarily buy that. Like, 68's fine. 64 is great. Like that's all fine with me. But like there are some teams that are getting the tournament already that probably don't need to be in the tournament. I don't know why we got to get this thing. I don't know why in every college sport now we got to start talking about expanding everything. Like, can we not just enjoy things the way that they are for a little bit? I mean, you started this piece at The Athletic, and it's pretty funny, but it's true. Like, the Triple Crown in horse racing, you want it to be a quadruple crown? Should they play a couple Super Bowls every year? Like, it's just dumb. Like, I don't know why in college sports we got to think about expanding things all the time. And I can tell you, look, I'm as you know, a casual at best college basketball fan, right? I watch the tournament. I like the NCAA tournament. It's awesome. But frankly, for the most part, other than watching Tennessee and Vanderbilt, it's basically the only college basketball I watch. Like, I just don't watch a whole lot of other college basketball. As a casual college basketball observer and somebody who likes the tournament, this does nothing for me. Like, this is not creating more interest for me in the NCAA tournament if they expand this thing to 76. I know who it does things for. It does things for the TV networks who get to play more games, and it does things, as Ian pointed out, for the sports betting community who have more games to bet on as this goes on. So there are people that absolutely will benefit from this. I don't know that the college basketball fan, particularly the casual college basketball fan, is one of them. I mean, look, you could find a lot of people around the country who love college basketball who say, you know what, give me as many college basketball games as you possibly can in a tournament, and I will watch it. And I'm sure those people exist, and I'm sure they have no problem with this. But by and large, I'm with you. I can't see too many people being overly excited about this. You already have 68 teams. Like, why do you need more? There's plenty here. And again, as I've talked about with college football expansion, before they ever got to 12, what I said was it won't stop there because it will never be enough. And they'll get to this, and then somebody that Greg Sankey or whoever else thinks should be in the tournament will get left out if it goes to 76. And here we'll be 10 years from now discussing how the NCAA tournament now has 95 teams in it. Like, it's just stupid. So I'm telling you now, this won't be the last time they try to expand if they do it.
Yeah, and that's it, right. That's the thing. So now, so what's next? We're just going to keep talking about this. Nate says in the text line, we know it's about the money. How much more will they actually make? Adding a few extra teams doesn't seem like much. Yeah, I mean, it's not some huge windfall, and really, like the answer to that is, I mean, now certain leagues, if you get more teams in, you get units, you get financial units, right? So that's more for them. But I mean, the TV deal, I think, goes through 2032.
Yeah.
They're in the middle of and it's a massive number. I have the number written in the column there, but it's a massive number that they're in right now. But a big driver of this has been years of coaches pushing this. I mean, more coaches than not favor this, even coaches who get in the tournament a lot. I mean, look, co-executive assistant to the regional manager producer Tom Izzo has spoken out support for this, and it's a lot of it is like the coaches are judged on making the NCAA tournament, so make it easier to do that. But to me, it's like, okay, well, if you expand to a certain point, then that's not going to be much of an achievement anymore. I mean, it's just, I think it's short-sighted, and again, it's like, I'm not saying that you always just ask the fans or ask your customer. But you mentioned the casuals. I agree. The casuals, if you mess up the bracket, you mess up the timing, you could lose some casuals. But even the hardcores, like Rob Douster has Field of 68. I think it's a great college basketball site. And so he is followed on X by the hardcores. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like, if you want to go find like hardcore college hoops fans, they go to his site, follow him. He put up a poll yesterday, very simple. You want it or not? Expansion or no? Almost 12,000 votes right now. The poll's about to close. 93.6% no, 6.4% yes. I'm actually a little surprised at 6.4% yes. But think about how overwhelming that is. Like, at some point, maybe listen to your customers.
Do you know how hard it is to get 93% of people in today's climate to agree on anything? Like, you can't get 93% of people today to agree that the earth isn't flat. And you can get 93% to say that this is a bad idea. By the way, the number that you've put in your article, $19.6 billion. $19.6 billion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so again, it's like, okay, that's great. We know, college basketball in the regular season, you're averaging, close to 1 million in a regular season game. That's your average. We were in the 20 millions for the title game. It peaked in the 20 millions. Regularly. I mean, this was actually the biggest ratings overall since 93.
Yeah.
Huge numbers. You're getting in the teens, 15, 16 million. Those are numbers that compete with like the top stuff in sports. That's the difference between college basketball in the regular season and this tournament for 3 weeks. It is absolutely dominant. I don't know why you're messing with that. Like, and again, I don't know if it's going to ruin it. Am I going to let me be honest. Am I going to stop, caring about the NCAA tournament or loving it? No. So a lot of people are going to, whatever happens, you're going to live with it and then move on. But I just think at some point, you think about something that has worked and for a variety of different reasons works exactly the way it is. Again, which to me is when you get to Thursday.
Yeah.
I feel like the risk is definitely too much for what the rewards here are. And I think some people are really exaggerating the rewards, but I guess we'll find out. Hopefully we won't find out, but we'll probably find out.
I agree on all that. And here's the other thing too, and Keith brings this up, and it's a good point. Like, shouldn't making the NCAA tournament, isn't that supposed to mean something, right? Like, 76, does it change the math all that much? No. But again, like, it's never going to be good enough for these people. Haven't we learned that by now? Like college football playoff expansion. It's never good enough. You go from 4 to 12 and you immediately go into 16. And I'm here to tell you, when they get to 16 and Alabama is the 17th best team in America and they get left out, there's going to be whining about more expansion at that point. It's never enough for these people. And I don't want to get to the point with the NCAA tournament where 96 teams are making it. Like, what does that mean if you make the tournament when 90 teams are making it? What does it mean when you make the tournament when 76 teams are making it? Like, that needs to be an accomplishment to make the NCAA tournament.
Right. So there's what, like with coaches, I mean, making a tournament may not be job security if we do this. And again, it's like, the people say again, well, look, my old colleague Seth Davis is the one person who's just out there hardcore for expansion. He's like, well, look at all the other, look at all the pro leagues who expanded. I'm like, yeah, that's true. Did it help them? Is baseball better off right now with 12 teams in the playoffs than it was when I grew up and baseball was a more dominant force nationally and it had 4? I would say no. I'm not saying expanding the playoffs ruined it, but it sure as heck hasn't helped it, has it?
No. Well, I'll tell you this, like, there's been the thought, and thankfully the NHL has thrown this out the door for the most part, but there's been the thought that since the lease at 32 now, and the league is going to expand, NHL, it's going to expand. They're probably going to at some point end up at like 36. And there's a thought to like expand the playoff then. And I'm like, no, leave the Stanley Cup playoffs alone. There's 16 teams. It's perfect the way it is. Leave it alone. The playoffs, making the playoffs needs to make something. And look, in the NFL, they expanded it by one team getting in. And I didn't even really like that, but it's been fine. I hope they don't touch it again. Like 7 is fine on both sides, but we're getting a little bit too crazy in the world of sports with expansion with these postseasons, and it's getting out of hand.
Exactly. No, it really is. And I'm with you. Like, so, basketball, hockey, like, there's no justification. And football now, too. Another point on March Madness is the thing that's, if you take March as a whole and March Madness and what it means as a whole, we think of it as a tournament, but really it's the whole month. And with those one bid leagues, it really what we have is we do have everybody in this tournament. Those conference tournaments, which I absolutely love, where the 5th place team can rise up and get a bid. I mean, they are playing. Those are the playing games for the NCAA tournament. So we already really kind of have and the power leagues have those tournaments too, and have those auto bids available. So really, like, we get everybody with a chance when you start the month off. And like the idea that, oh, well, now that, 17 and 15, Georgia team can get in, like, why does that make it better?
Right. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction to the possible expansion of the NCAA tournament. Plus, Joe's got a hot take coming up next. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game. The Borchetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix coming to the Nashville Super Speedway Labor Day weekend, and 1025 The Game has your chance to win VIP tickets to the IndyCar race. Text in the keyword race to 615-737-1025 and to be entered to win a pair of VIP tickets. For more information on the event, visit musiccitygp.com. Robby and Rexrode here on 1025, 1063 The Game, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up at 7:45 here on the program. Joe, we had Scott Docterman on earlier this week. And by the way, let me tell you, I really enjoyed the interview with Scott Docterman. He continues the piece that he did at The Athletic on the top 100 rivalries in college football, continue to make the noise around the landscape of the sports world this week. A lot of people discussing his piece at The Athletic that I've seen. So that has been interesting to watch. But you have a hot take on rivalry week that I don't really think is all that much of a hot take, but I think if you polled people nationally, they probably would. Joe, your thoughts on rivalry week and why you have a problem at what is pretty much nationally viewed as the number one rivalry in all of college football.
Yeah, I just think Alabama-Auburn is the number one rivalry, because I think the in-state element of that rivalry is just, it's really important. And I just think in-state rivalries, they have something that other rivalries don't have. They just, it really comes down to, like, when you can't really escape the fans of your rival, when you live among them and live among each other, like and that goes for the participants too, the coaches and players. I mean, again, like Tennessee and Vanderbilt, we wouldn't call that one of the greatest rivalries. Where did Scott rank that? 80th? Something like that?
Somewhere in the 80s, yeah.
But still, like, just Pavia kind of pops off a couple weeks ago, and I mean, it's not just people living among each other. It's not just these players and coaches and whatnot. You get state legislatures involved sometimes. Talk radio. What do we talk about on this show? We talk about Vanderbilt and Tennessee. I mean, there's Alabama fans in town, but we don't talk much Alabama. We talk about the teams that are in the state. So when you have people that are just put together, I just think that brings a totally different element. And the nastiness and hatred of the Alabama-Auburn series, I mean, obviously sometimes it's like way too far.
Oh yeah.
And that is the same thing with a rivalry that I know well, Michigan State, which is a nastier rivalry than Michigan-Ohio State. I think nastiness should be taken into account. I went to an officiating clinic about 10 years ago in Chicago, just to do some stories for the Detroit Free Press, where I worked at the time. And Bill LeMonnier, who now people may know him as he's a replay guy, for Fox for college football. I think that's right.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
So he was retiring, and I did a story on him retiring. And the big thing he told me that I was like, wow, but I mean, I totally wasn't surprised either. He said, as an official, Michigan, Ohio State, obviously a huge game to officiate, tough game to officiate, intense and all that stuff, but way harder to officiate Michigan State, way more intense of a game. And a lot of people would be surprised to hear that, but there's just a hatred that is different. So that's why, to me, Alabama-Auburn is better. And this is also recency bias, right? Look, Michigan, Ohio State, I mean, they're the last two national champions. They've had two top 5 matchups, not last year, but the two, so back to back. So obviously at this moment, as we look at this, a lot of people are like, no way, of course that's the best. And Auburn stinks right now. So, I mean, that's part of the evaluation right now. Look, again, go back 10 years. There were people saying, is Michigan, Ohio State even the best rivalry in the Big Ten? Ohio State kills them every year. It's not a rivalry. It's not competitive. And so that's part of this too. If now, is Auburn going to get their crap together? I don't know. The longer we go with them not, I think the more people I like that fades from the idea. But I'm still.
Hey, Hugh Freeze's golf swing apparently looking real good, looking real nice out there.
That whole thing's amazing. My goodness. Yeah, we should.
Lane Kiffin, big fan of his golf swing too.
Kiffin trolling him on his how much he golfs. That's amazing. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, and if you look at the 4 programs right now, obviously Auburn is the one where you're a little iffy. They've always been like, they'll be down and they'll just win a title, right? Yeah. And then so that's, I mean, their relative lack of consistent excellence, I definitely factors into this too. But I'm still going with the Iron Bowl, man. I think it's the best in college football. And I think right now this idea of like, well, of course, it's a clear, distant second. Again, to me, that's recency bias.
Keith says Auburn versus Alabama is the football equivalent of Duke versus North Carolina in basketball. I kind of like that. What do you make of that? That's pretty good. I never thought about it that way, but the nastiness for sure. I think that would be right on par.
Exactly. And then again, the difference is, Duke and Carolina, well, their campuses are 8 miles apart.
Right.
You can't, and so Michigan, Ohio State, for example, or Texas, Oklahoma, Red River. I compare it to that too. I mean, border rivalries are pretty close. Like Michigan, Ohio State, you get the city of Toledo, which was like, if you want to go back in history, like they were fighting over who got Toledo, which is hilarious to think about. And that city is very split. It's on the border. And
Holy Toledo.
There you go. It's like famously half Michigan, half Ohio State, but it's still not the same as like an entire state being one or the other,
Yeah.
And having to live in your state for a year after your rival won, or getting to be there around fans of the other team after you beat your rival, that is a big deal, man. And it doesn't exist in the non-in-state rivalries.
Brandon on YouTube says there's only one game that gets fans from ages 6 to 90 smoking cigars after a W. It's from Brandon on YouTube. Said Saban himself said Tennessee was a bigger rival to Bama than Auburn. This is from Brandon on YouTube. I wonder what Glenn Ellerby thinks of all this.
I don't know. I hope he enjoyed many cigars.
I bet he did
after those wins. When did Saban say that, by the way?
I have to see him say it that clear. I remember him saying something about, like, I guess to a certain part of the fan base it being that way, but or maybe to the players. I can't remember which one it was. I do remember him mentioning it in some way, though.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe a college game day.
Yeah, again, like with these things, there is a cyclical nature. Tennessee, Florida, we've talked about it. Like that used to be. Brandon says Ellerby vapes after a W. Oh man. I bet for the record, we've never actually ripped Glenn Ellerby on our program.
Yeah, I just want to let the record show.
We're just reading what people say, man. But I mean, I think Alabama, Tennessee, I do think that 11 was a little low, certainly behind Minnesota, Wisconsin. That's just the fact that it's one spot behind, I think, made it worse. Like, no. But I still got to go. I mean, again, Alabama, Auburn, it's just different because of, again, like even like the Harvey Updike thing. I mean, I'm sorry, but like, it's not something to celebrate, but it is something to be like, holy crap.
It's crazy.
He went to prison to poison trees because he hates Auburn so much.
Yep. 615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll take your thoughts on Rexrode's take of Alabama-Auburn being a bigger rivalry than Ohio State and Michigan. Plus, going back to the Doctorman piece, I've got something that I'd really love to know from Tennessee fans as well. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a pair of tickets to give away to see Coheed and Cambria at Ascend Amphitheater on Wednesday, September the 3rd. Be caller 2, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Caller 2 will win a pair of tickets to Coheed and Cambria at Ascend Amphitheater coming up on Wednesday, September the 3rd. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up here in just a few minutes at 7:45. Taking your thoughts on Rexrode throwing it out there that he thinks Auburn, Alabama, a better rivalry than Ohio State and Michigan. By the way, Gunner on the text line, Joe, says that people are sleeping on Kentucky and Louisville. Sleeping on Kentucky and Louisville. I'm trying to remember. So I pulled up Doctorman's list. I remember seeing Kentucky and Louisville higher than I thought it would be in terms of like more up the list than I thought it would be. 79th is where he's got them. Kentucky and Louisville in college football rivalries. 79th, right below Tennessee and Vanderbilt.
Yeah, obviously you're not talking about high level, and a lot of what he did, which I think is good, is going through, ranked matchups, both ranked, top 10, top 5, all that stuff. So from that perspective, that series is not going to move the needle a lot. I mean, Kentucky's history is pretty patchy. You got Bear Bryant and you had Tim Couch and some pretty good teams recently. Louisville has a little better history, but again, they're kind of up and down. But still, like in that, I mean, I've driven through Kentucky many times, and I swear when I listen to talk radio in Kentucky, I mean, it's Louisville, Kentucky hoops that dominates, but I hear plenty of talk about the football stuff too. Because again, when you have anything that's in the same state, it's just different.
One thing I'd like to know from Tennessee fans, Doctorman on this list has got Tennessee, Alabama at 11. It's got Tennessee, Florida at 36, which would suggest that he thinks there's a gap between Tennessee, Alabama, and Tennessee, Florida as the rival. Now, I've always said, Joe, and some of this is just personal because I have a lot of people in my family who are Alabama fans, and I've always had a distinct hatred to Alabama more so than any other team. So for me, Tennessee, Alabama has always been the best rivalry and the biggest rivalry that I observe. Don't get me wrong, I hate Florida. So like Tennessee, Florida is up there too. But I think for a lot of Tennessee fans, Joe, especially if you grew up in a certain time, Tennessee, Florida is more of a rivalry than Tennessee, Alabama is. I would be interested to know like where most Tennessee fans come down on that. And if they think that there's as big of a gap as Doctorman does in this list here, where he's got Tennessee, Alabama as the 11th best rivalry in all of college football, and Tennessee, Florida coming in at number 36.
That's definitely a generational thing, right? Like if you're of a certain age, third Saturday in October was a big, big deal before anyone gave a rat's about Florida, right? But then in the 90s, I mean, again, I think Florida, Tennessee, you get into 1994, into the 2000s, I'd put it up there with any game that I was excited to watch in college football. As a casual fan, that's a game that I was super excited for every September, was Tennessee, Florida. So I think it just depends on your age, but I think the overall history, I think it's clear that Alabama, and this discussion, Robby, is a really interesting one to have like 4 years ago or something, before we've now had these great Bama Tennessee games to kind of re-spark that rivalry, right?
Yeah.
Like when we're in the middle of Bama just destroying Tennessee every year, and Tennessee, Florida still having like competitive games, maybe some people would have answered that differently.
Well, here's the other step for Tennessee. Like Tennessee has had obviously some success against Florida and Alabama the last few years with Heupel. It's all been at home. All of it has been at home. So you got both of them on the road this year. Can you find a way to win one or both of those games on the road? Which, by the way, if I had to guess right now, I know they'd be an underdog to Alabama on the road, and I think they'd probably be an underdog to Florida on the road right now as well. So the odds at the moment, I think, are going to be stacked against you to go do it this year, but it's been a long time. I think, when's the last time they won in Florida? 05? Was that the last time?
03?
03. I think it was 03, and the last time they won in Bama was 05. So
yeah.
It's been a long time since they've won at Alabama or at Florida.
Yeah. No. Caleb says, I hate Florida more than Bama. Both of them should be in the top 10. Those stadiums have more concession stand workers than Minnesota has fans. I mean, I don't think they should both be in the top 10. I mean, you go through the list and there's a lot of good ones. I mean, you got to, and again, like, for example, someone bringing up the text line, the Egg Bowl, as far as in-state hatred, number 1 or 2. So I agree. Like, that is a great example of there aren't a lot of high leverage games, like in terms of, there just aren't, especially, like Mississippi State. I mean, its history, the best stretch was back with Dan Mullen and Dak, but the hatred, and that's also one where a lot of people watch it because of where it's placed, right? Sometimes it's like the only football game that you could watch at the time, but I think that's a great example of how the in-state thing can ratchet it up so much. But as far as Tennessee, Tennessee, Florida, I mean, I think it's probably about right where it is at this point, just because as great as that stretch
wasn't a long stretch.
It wasn't a long stretch. And frankly, both programs have been so up and down too much, in the last 20 years. I mean, obviously Florida had its amazing stretch with Urban and Tebow and all that stuff, but Tennessee, of course, just hasn't been up to snuff like it should have been since the early 2000s.
But it could be, all these things. Tennessee, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida could be getting interesting here over the next few years here. We'll see if old Billy stays employed by Florida, but they should have a pretty good squad this year with DJ Lagway.
Yes, they should. And by the way, this is another argument for 9 games, because although they're talking about they can protect more even with 8 and do some stuff, I mean, you get 9 games and Tennessee can have Bama and Florida and Vanderbilt every year, I believe.
Yep.
And to me, that's absolutely one of the reasons that it is worth doing it. You're going to lose. You just, you already screwed so many things up. Don't lose rivalries if you can help it. We've lost Nebraska, Oklahoma. Doctorman ranked at 6. A lot of people got mad. My initial thought was, God, they don't even play. But again, we're going by overall history and I mean, that series was incredible forever, for decades. It was like a 1 versus 4, 3 versus 6 game, and it's gone. And so anything you can do if you're in power in college football right now to preserve any of the tradition, I would say that should be a priority.
What do you think the most overrated rivalry is? What's the most overrated rivalry in your mind? I've got my answer. Like USC Notre Dame. I think it's so overrated. Like it's those two when they get together. I'm kind of with John Reed in Knoxville, who says that they've been living off the Bush push in that rivalry for 20 years. Like that rivalry does nothing for me. Now, I understand that USC and Notre Dame both have incredibly rich football histories. I'm not naive to not understand that, but I think that rivalry is overrated.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, obviously right now is especially a time when it feels that way, because USC is just so disappointing.
Cheeks.
Yeah. And so, but it's like I don't have a problem with where it is on the list, because he is going with historical, like he's going with historical data. Like, and if you're doing that, like, again, count up how many games. Yeah. That Bush push was a huge game. 20 years ago, I think, basically 20.
It's 20 years ago.
I mean, you go back to the 60s, 70s, 80s, it was often a big factor in the national. So historically, I think it's probably ranked where it is, but I agree. Like right now, it doesn't move the needle at all like it used to. Like, and the thing is, when you talk about overrated, it's like, I mean, some of these, like, again, Florida State, Miami used to be as good as it got. And now, I mean, do I care about Florida State, Miami game?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like, we sometimes we have where they're both good, but it just hasn't happened enough. So that's another one that's just kind of, and that's an in-state thing. That's Florida State was incredible. It just doesn't, it's not the same. So like, you do have to, like, if a program, one or both of the programs involved fall off like some of these have, then the history only goes so far.
I'll tell you one that has received, from what I've seen, Joe, just looking from afar here, again, I've seen a lot of people this week talking about this list that Dockerman's come out with. The one that has received the most hate has been Ohio State and Penn State, ranked at number 8, because the general thought has been, well, yeah, I understand there've been a lot of highly ranked matchups between the two teams, but how many times has Penn State actually beaten them in a meaningful game?
Yeah, exactly. No, for sure. And I do think that's got to be taken into account. Is it competitive? And they got them the one year where they like blocked the field goal, right? I mean, I think that was the year. I think that was the year maybe that Penn State lost USC and Adoree Jackson in the Rose Bowl. But very, very rarely do they win that game.
I mean, they've only played 40 times ever.
Yeah.
And the first came in 1912, but Ohio State has almost doubled them up. I mean, they're 26-14. And again, you look at the last, I don't know, 15 years. How many times has Penn State come through and actually beat them when it counted?
Exactly. And so that's where that's a recency bias, overrated rivalry. It has been a big game a lot, but you gotta have some back and forth, especially like if Wisconsin, Minnesota. It is amazing that they've played the most and they're exactly tied.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That counts.
Yeah.
But again, if that is a big part of them being higher than most people think, then when a rivalry isn't competitive, you have to take that into account too. And again, that's where like Michigan, Ohio State, of course, the last 4 years it has changed dramatically. So right now it's at the top. Like I get why people would think that, but 15 out of 16 before that.
Yep.
And it would have been 16 out of 17, but Michigan, had like COVID numbers and they didn't play in the 2020 game. That's not competitive. So those things should matter too.
615-737-1025, our phone number. The Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment. Let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
32 dive on 2. Hut. Seemed like they were really rocking it out, though.
Rexrode.
Ear herpes. Can't get rid of them. I like General Booty.
You lost my pants. That doesn't seem fair.
I have to sleep with the dogs. Yep, go over there and sniff that butt. Get off the internet. Permanently.
It is that time of the day. Time for the Rex Rant. I am dying at the. I like General Booty. I had forgotten about that one. Oh man, good stuff. Joseph, without further ado, I turn everything over to you for the Rex Rant for today.
Oh my goodness. Do I really say these things? Is this AI? Is this AI that, like, does Ian have an AI
He
bot
might.
who like takes my voice and makes it say absolutely idiotic stuff? Please tell me that's.
I wish that were the case for you, Joe. I wish that were the case.
So do I. So do I. All right. Well, today I do want to address. First of all, there was a lot of topics yesterday. I was like excited to talk about, and then I crashed into a tree. So I'm like, did we talk about? Like the Jeff Simmons ranking, and
We did.
Bill Barnwell.
We did.
And the Titans have a bunch of D3 players at the skill positions. I mean, like, there's a lot of stuff I missed yesterday, which I feel bad. Like Kirk Cousins, my buddy Kirk Cousins, and getting screwed over. And one thing I was going to do yesterday, I'm going to do today now, is this Kirk Herbstreit L. Duncan thing is just really fascinating to me. For those who aren't aware of this, so Kirk Herbstreit, he was on a podcast. What podcast was that? I don't even remember.
It was a comedian. It was John Christ, something like that.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah. Nashville guy.
I tried to listen through. It's a good hour or so. I couldn't find the exact quote Joe was looking for, but they talked about all types of random stuff.
Yeah, so Herbstreit starts kind of going off on homerism, in media, and he brings up L. Duncan, who's on ESPN. If you watch enough ESPN, you definitely know that L. Duncan went to Georgia and is a big Georgia Bulldogs fan.
Yeah.
And he called her out, and then she went on Twitter, was basically just kind of clap back a little bit, like, wow, like, why am I singled out? And that's my whole thing with this. What I would say to Herbstreit is, I don't necessarily disagree, but like where have you been the last 15 years? And I will say it used to bother me way more.
Yeah.
I'm just used to it now. I've talked about this on our show before. Look, I was on the Michigan State beat with Charles, a friend of the show, and Jamel Hill, friend of the show. And, we all went to Michigan State. We covered Michigan State. I swear, I could not. And I was on the beat a lot longer than they both were. They moved on, and I stayed there forever and ever. But I could not care less if Michigan State wins or loses. I will never be a Michigan State fan, But they both, Jamel is on ESPN when she's doing Sports Center, and she's all of a sudden she's like, Sparty, and I'm like, what are we doing here? What? And even Charles sometimes will text me like, oh man, I'm so nervous about some game. I'm like, shut up, you quit being such a freaking homer. But that's, what, this is at some point in sports media, we got to this. Hey, let us all know what your teams are, and let's talk about it. So I don't see why now it's like, dude, this is the toothpaste been out of the tube for a decade plus here.
I got a few problems with this. Number one, I generally agree with what he's saying. I think particularly if you're a play-by-play guy or you're on a broadcast of a game, which is a lot of what he talked about in this, you need to be as down the middle as you can be, because what you don't want to have when you're broadcasting a game is the audience. And sometimes, look, we get this every week from people, is the audience thinking that play-by-play guys or color commentators hate their team or love the other team. And a lot of times that's just not true, and it gets over-exaggerated. But you don't want that to actually be the case, because that would not be good. I don't really care what the Sports Center host roots for. It doesn't really bother me if we know that the Sports Center host is a Georgia fan, or if the studio host at ESPN, like Stephen A. Smith is a big Knicks fan. Like we all know that. Like that part of it doesn't really bother me. But it does kind of bother me that Kirk Herbstreit didn't really point out at ESPN, who I think is by far the biggest example of this. And that's Mike Greenberg. Every time they start talking about the Jets, it's like Greenberg's over there in a Jets jersey. Like I remember when Aaron Rodgers first signed there, and it's the only thing that was on ESPN for like 3 months is because it was all about the Jets, and it was like Greenberg wearing a Rodgers jersey out there. And it's like, all right, I don't care that you're a Jets fan. It doesn't bother me. But it also doesn't need to be like all we talk about. I don't care. Like, let's move on. Let's talk about the actual sports. So I feel like, like I've seen L. Duncan and doing the Georgia stuff. It doesn't really bother me all that much. Greenberg being a Jets fan doesn't really bother me all that much, other than it's all they talked about for 3 months. And that wasn't the example that Herbstreit brought up. And I'll tell you the other thing that bothers me a little bit about this. And let me be clear. I think for the most part, Herbstreit does a really, really good job. Like I think he's really good at his job. But we are talking about the same guy that, when Ohio State just won the national championship, had to take a minute to compose himself on the broadcast because he was crying because the program around him and the people that he knew there. And again, there's nothing overly wrong with that. Like I understand that Herbstreit played at Ohio State and he knows some people in the program and he's friends with people there. And you can be happy with people that winning and doing well and being successful without like just being diehard fans and rooting for the team. I get that. But when you're sitting there like kind of crying and taking a minute to compose yourself after Ohio State just won the national championship, I don't really want to hear you lecturing everybody else on objectivity at that point.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, I think some of that also was like, just Ryan Day and what he had gone through after losing Michigan. And so there was a personal thing there. But yeah, the bottom line, and I think Herbstreit's the best. I do. And he'll continue to be the best if I'm picking someone to do commentary in a college football game, I'm picking him quickly, for sure. Number one. And I'm probably going to go Sean McDonough number two. But the fact is that is now like that's going to get brought up and put in his face like many times in the future. It's just it's just what it is. But you brought it. I think it's a great point on Greenberg because it's like I don't care about watching like this video of him like watching the Jets going like it's like I think we're leaning into it a little bit much. And obviously ESPN wants that stuff, right? Like they lean into it. They encourage us. That's what. So Herbstreit's talking about L. Duncan. I'm like, I promise you, like ESPN wants people to do these things. But I think the Stephen A is a little different, and I have a little more problem with it because he's specific to their NBA coverage.
Yeah, he covers the league.
Now look, you'll hear, you might like Barkley or Kenny, maybe Kenny Smith will say something about the not Astros, the Rockets, because he was a great player there. Or Barkley might say something about the Suns here and there, but for the most part, they just do the job. I don't really care. Like the guy who's at the games, at the finals, doing your pregame and postgame, and then you also have footage of him like crying when the Knicks did this or that, or getting so excited. Yeah, I kind of I think that might be a line that they shouldn't have crossed.
Again, when I first saw this, I was thinking about, and I know L. Duncan does more than just the SportsCenter stuff, but my first thought was like, I don't really care. Like another good example. I am well aware that Scott Van Pelt is a huge Maryland guy. It does not bother me in the slightest.
Me either.
Scott Van Pelt is a huge Maryland guy. When he's going over Maryland highlights in a game, I do not care. Like I don't care what the SportsCenter host is a fan of. I just, the first thing I thought about was how we were all subjected to like 4 months of Mike Greenberg running around in an Aaron Rodgers jersey on ESPN. I was like, that was probably the most egregious example. Let's point that one out.
Yeah. Now, if Van Pelt did like a college hoop specific show and he's constantly talking about the Terps, that's where I'm like, okay, like put that to the side. Gover asks, is that a generational thing? I'm more old school, can't stand the homer slant, but a lot of younger media people seem to not care. Yeah, I mean, again, like at some point, ESPN, and maybe it's the idea is like, let's have more of like who these people really are, their personalities, and that includes their sports fandom. Why not have fun with that? Which again, for the most part, I'm okay with. There's just certain lines that I don't think you should cross.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll take your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We're going to get into the Titans receivers coming up next. What is best case? If it's best case for Titans receivers this year, and I'm talking realistic here, What does that look like? How good can this receiving core actually be? We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Thursday morning. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. We're taking your thoughts on the Titans at 615-737-1025. So we talked some yesterday and earlier this week about the Titans on the offensive side of the ball, wide receiver, what that could look like. And I want to get Joe's thoughts on this as well. I was wondering last night, and we're a couple weeks out from camp. We're going to see a lot of things go on during camp. I mean, there'll be a day where I'm sure that, like, man, did you see Bryce Oliver out there today? Yeah, like 5 catches. It was unbelievable what he was able to do. There will be days where Cam Ward throws 3 interceptions. And I'm telling people, by the time training camp comes around, there's going to be so many overreactions one way or the other that it's going to be hard to keep it straight. I'm trying to get to the bottom of, Joe, what is the best case scenario for this receiving core this year? Like, what does that look like? What does that entail? And, I'm trying to live in the world of realism here. Like, I'm not talking best case scenario of, well, Traylon Burks is healthy and he finally lives up to what they thought he was going to be. And Traylon Burks has 1,400 yards this year, because I think that is just so far-fetched, and that's not even within the scope of realism. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about, like, what's the best version of Calvin Ridley at this point in his career? What can Tyler Lockett realistically give you that you'd be like, yep, that's great. Like, we love that from Tyler Lockett. When you're looking at Alec Io-Manor and Chimere Dike, like, what do those two guys bring to the table where you get to the end of it, you're like, yeah, it's hard to expect much more from those guys than what we just saw this season. So with that in mind, Joe, as you look at this wide receiver core, and I'm assuming health in this because it's hard to have this discussion without knowing exactly what the injury luck is going to look like, but assuming that everybody's healthy, what do you think the best case scenario for this wide receiving group actually looks like? How good can they be? Coming off a day yesterday, Joe, where we saw Bill Barnwell rank the wide receivers, running backs, and tight end group for the Titans 32nd out of 32 in the National Football League.
Well, let's see. Let's start with Xavier Restrepo, Rookie of the Year.
There we go.
Traylon Burks, Comeback Player of the Year. Calvin Ridley, Offensive MVP. Now, you mentioned the names that I think, like, even if the names you mentioned are key, I think that's close to a best case scenario. Now, with Ridley, like 12 to 1,400 yards. I think, and I'm trying to be realistic.
Yes.
I think that's, I think that would be really good. That would be a really good year. Tyler Lockett is more DeAndre Hopkins of a couple of years ago than Tyler Boyd of last year, right? He's actually like, okay, that more, or like Robert Woods, just obviously this franchise has an incredible history of picking up receivers who underperform or just, they were actually at the end of their rope when they get here. Hopkins being a huge exception. Lockett being another exception, that's a big deal. If we're even talking about the 2 rookies, the 2 4th-rounders on a regular basis because they're out there that often, I think that really means something. I don't know that, statistically, DK to me is like, I could see the stats not being consistently all that impressive, but can he be a big play guy that you can sprinkle in? Even like a rookie, maybe better version of like what they had with Khalif Raymond a few years ago, where, here and there, you're going to get a big play out of him. I think that, again, trying to be, if it's better than that, great. But I think it's hard to expect much more than that. Io-Manor, I think, is to me, is the guy you look at like, boy, it would be really big for them to have a rookie who consistently plays and produces and has some instant impact, but also shows that there's more there, and that down the road he can grow into a good starting receiver in the NFL.
I think, we did that Titans buy or sell a few weeks back. And I think the line that I had for DK and Io-Manor was 850. Like, could they combine for 850? Would you go over or under that? Like, would you take that? That doesn't sound like a lot on the surface, right? But again, we're talking about 2 4th-round picks here who are rookies. So I don't know that that's necessarily going to be an even split either. Like, I'm with you. I could see particularly DK being a guy where you look at the end of the year and you're like, man, he had like 21 catches. Like, he didn't catch the ball very often, but his average catch was like 18 or something like that, right? Like, just some ridiculous number because he uses his speed, he gets down the field, and they're able to connect on a few big shots with him. Like, maybe that's what it ends up looking like with him. Io-Manor, I think has a chance maybe to be on the field a little bit more and a chance to be kind of more of your straight up traditional possession type of guy in the NFL. We're talking about 2 4th-round rookies here. We'll see exactly what the playing time ends up looking like for both those guys. But like if either one of those guys individually, to me, Joe, had like 500 yards this year or anything over 500 yards, like to me, that's a pretty darn good season for a rookie 4th-round draft pick wide receiver. Like I think some people are expecting those guys to come in and like have like 800 yards a pop, and I just don't see that with this group the way it's currently constructed.
I agree. On the text line, Caleb says they need Manor to pop and be a stud is what they need. So would it be better for them to be around that number you mentioned and both of them show some promise, or like for him to really be something and maybe DK is just kind of lost in the shuffle and maybe we'll see, maybe down the road he could be something, but he just doesn't get into the playing group because Bryce Oliver, is a guy who I think is probably going to get snaps out there. Van Jefferson, we'll see. I'm a little more skeptical there, but you have to also factor him in as a possibility. And I'm not ruling out Restrepo, but you can see where DK could, of the two, where he could be lost in the shuffle. If they're both lost in the shuffle, that's the problem, and that's where like Weston Clarksville says, I want to know why they didn't pay NWI. I mean, I think some of that is they do want to they want to get younger. They want to have someone with a higher ceiling. NWI has maxed himself out in this league. Great story. But they also, I think, like Bryce Oliver, and he has a spot and maybe a little bit more impactful on special teams than NWI. I mean, I think that's the answer. They really need at least one of these rookies to show right away, yep, that's a nice value pick in the 4th round.
Well, and I would also say this, like on the NWI front, he's also been a part of a lot of losing the last couple of years. Don't discount the possibility that he just wanted to get out of here. Like it ain't like he went to Miami and he signed this huge deal. Like he's got $3.2 million of guaranteed money. It ain't very much money that he signed for down there in Miami. So I don't even know that it's a case that the Titans let him go. He may have just said, hey, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going somewhere else. I'd like a shot to win around here.
I think absolutely. I mean, I think it's been tough for these guys around here. And now you have all these changes and it's a different system and everything. And obviously it goes very poorly. It's like when Derrick Henry left, that I think that was just as much, if not more, that he was like, okay, I'm sick of running to the brick wall here and losing. And obviously turned out pretty well for him.
Well, I would say this, you bring up an interesting point on the Io Manor front. Like, would it be better if you saw, like, I guess, moderate levels of success from both Io Manor and DK this year? Or would it be better if, like, Io Manor really popped and DK you just weren't sure about at the end of the year? I would probably lean that. I mean, look, Joe, let's just play the odds here. The odds are that both your 4th-round picks at wide receiver probably aren't going to work out. I mean, let's just be real. The odds that DK and Io
I agree. In fact,
are both going to work out are not high.
No, I agree. Look, if like either one of them, I would choose right now. I would choose one of them pops, like really pops, and one of them is a total bust. Okay, great. Rather than both of them are not bad, and you can see a little something there. If you get one of them, one 4th-round pick to pop, great. Then and the other one it just is a lost pick. I think that's easily the choice. You need someone young that you can hang your hat on moving forward. I mean, I think next year we're probably headed toward a high receiver pick. I think that's a real possibility. And of course, 2 years from now, like the whole league's gonna I swear we'll never see more like talk about tanking for a receiver than before the 2027 draft when Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith are available. Like it's gonna be wild, but there's more coming in terms of young receivers. But if you could get one of these 4th-rounders to be like, okay, this is going to be a core player for me in the next few years, that would be huge. I think that's definitely the choice over both of them are decent.
So, like, best case scenario, I'm with you. Like Ridley, somewhere in that 1,200 to 1,400 yard range. Like that would be a huge win if he's able to do that. Lockett, I mean, could Lockett give you 60 catches this year? Could Lockett give you 60 catches for 750 yards, right? Like last year, he was at 49 for 600. At age 33, like it's hard to expect a whole lot more than that. If he gave you 60 catches this year for 750 yards, I mean, I'd be doing cartwheels over that if I were a Titans fan. I even think that that's probably high on the Lockett front, but that would be, realistic best case. Could he give you that? And then, I guess in best case, you'd like to see DK and Io Manor both pop. But really, I'm with you. Like, if you could get one of them to feel really good about by the end of the year that they're going to be a part of this thing for a long time with Cam Ward, that would be great at the end of the year. Like, I think that's what you're looking at with this receiving core right now. Expecting much beyond that, I think we start to drift into fantasy land a little bit.
So, did you determine that is Bill Barnwell being fair, or is Bill Barnwell a little bit excessively down on the Titans skill players?
Well, I mean, I think 32nd is right in line. Like, I don't know how you could look at their skill players right now and not think that they're somewhere in the neighborhood of 30th, 31st, 32nd. Like, he didn't even mention any of the tight ends, which was kind of weird. Like, Chigakonkwo, Gunnar Helm, Josh White, they just didn't come up in his little piece, which was interesting. So, I mean, that kind of tells you, I guess, what he thinks of the tight end group. So,
Yeah.
I'm leaving some room for Gunnar Helm maybe to come in and be pretty good. We'll see. And, maybe Io Manor does pop. There's some potential, I guess, is how I would answer it. There's some unknown potential that could change that by the end of the year. But right now, like, I have no problem with the Titans being ranked 32nd with that skill group.
Yeah, look, this gets into in a particular market, everybody knows very explicitly who all the players are. And there's always some guys who, wow, could this rookie be good? Could this veteran have his career year? How much does this guy like?
Yeah.
You can talk yourself into being pretty good, but then if they're not 32nd, then someone needs to tell me who is.
Right.
And what we know of that team is very surface compared to what they know of that team in that market. And there's a guy there who they have high hopes for. There's a third-year player that people are sleeping on, like NWI was here or whatever it is. I mean, I just don't think it's an outrageous thing.
Yeah, Carolina at 31, and you're not putting somebody that's got Xavier Legette on their team. You ain't putting them at 32. Not on my watch.
Man, he needs to become the absolute best player in the NFL.
I agree.
We all need it.
615-737-1025. So we've gone through what the best case scenario for the Titans could look like within the world of realism. What about the worst case scenario? What if things don't go well? How bad could this receiving core actually be? We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game.
indicators of development for you with the rookie pass catchers? Like, what are you looking for in this phase that tells you any of these guys are getting better? The speed at which they play, how quickly they can recognize things, from coverage and leverage, how quickly they pick up on some of the nuance that's required at this level with receivers. There's a lot of things that's on their plate. They have to be able to see a lot, and every day they come out, there's something new comes up for them. And I think the biggest thing is not repeating whatever mistake they made initially and continue to move forward. And again, the faster they start to play, the more comfortable you can assume they're getting. It's funny, sometimes you can almost see guys think when they're playing. And the idea for the receivers is that you don't want them thinking, you want them rolling, playing as fast as possible. And that just comes with reps.
That's Brian Callahan earlier this offseason discussing what he's looking for in the receivers and when he knows that they're picking some things up. Taking your thoughts on the Titans wide receiver core, 615-737-1025. Let's head to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Adam in Portland to the program. Adam, good morning. Thank you for calling in.
Robby, when you said that selector at the last end there that you left room for the tight ends, that was exactly what I thought when you brought this up. It's like the best case scenario for the Titans receivers is that they are not stared at every single play, because our tight end sucks, man. Like, Chig sucks. I hope Gunnar Helms is good. There's an opportunity for him to be good. I watched him at Texas. He's not a bad player. And hopefully he ends up getting some chemistry with our quarterback. But Chig sucks, man. And he left. It's not like our wide receiver room was anything special last year, but I don't think they're as bad either. And aside from Ridley, there's nobody that's going to go over 500 or 600 yards. So best case scenario, can you imagine Patrick Mahomes, what his wide receivers look like if Kelsey's not eating up 2 or 3 players? Like, it's not even for a great quarterback, it's not going to work. So we need a tight end to be a presence. When the Titans were good, Frank Wycheck demanded attention. Our wide receivers weren't great, but they looked a whole lot better because we had, I know Derek's great, and I know he's part of the show, but like Dyson, all these guys, Drew Bennett, they all benefited from a good tight end being there. So I just think our tight end has to be good, especially for a young quarterback, dude. Like, I don't know why you don't spend better capital to get a good tight end. I've never understood it. It's like 3 or 4 years in a row where I'm beating my head going, why don't we have a tight end for these terrible quarterbacks? So I hope our tight end's good, dude.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it, man. I know inevitably, Joe, in that conversation, the drafting of J.C. Latham and letting Brock Bowers go is always going to come up. That comes up on our text line, I think, once a day.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, he brings up an interesting point, because the Titans, obviously they kind of lucked out with Delaney Walker. They don't draft, and I know now we're talking about and we're talking about different front offices and stuff, but they just haven't drafted tight ends prominently. Jonnu Smith,
he's
third
all right.
rounder? Third rounder?
Yeah, he's third rounder. Yeah.
So there's an example of using some draft capital on tight end and paying off for you. And I got to say, man, obviously things didn't go great for him in New England, but pretty big bounce back. Still a pretty good freaking player in this league. And I still believe like he's always going to be an underrated part of that amazing offense from 2019, 2020, So there is something to be said for, at some point, are you going to use some serious capital on tight end, but maybe Helms will work out.
Let's head back to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our buddy Mark in Nashville. Mark, good morning. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, what's up, Robby? What's going on, Joe?
What's up, Mark?
Yeah, always good to hear from you, Joe. Yeah, I see you wasn't in there yesterday, but I figured I had to call and talk to you today. Hey, Robby, Joe, first of all, Brock Bowers is where he needs to be with my Raiders, so let's leave Brock alone now. Leave him alone.
I hear you.
Hey, Joe, Robby, is Traylon Burks on that roster at the end of all the cuts this year, or does he make the team and they give him one more chance to prove he could be a good wide receiver in the NFL?
Thanks for the call, Mark. I would say this, Joe. I don't think he's going to be on the team. I could be wrong. First off, I'm interested to see if he's available in camp. Like, how available is he going to be? That would be the first step. But I look at him right now, and I understand that wide receiver room is light. And if there's a place in the league where Traylon Burks could still latch on, it would be here based on what their wide receiver room looks like. But we know Ridley, Lockett. I think DK and Io Man are going to be on the team. I'm not going to guarantee Van Jefferson a spot. I'm not going to guarantee Bryce Oliver a spot, but I would at this point put both of those guys over Burks. Depending on how good Restrepo is, you could put him over Burks. Like all of a sudden we're getting to 7 guys right there. I don't think they're going to have room for Treylon Burks, and I think we've run out of. Well, let's just take a shot with Burks and see what it looks like. Unless he just absolutely forces it during camp to make you keep him on this roster, my answer would be no, he's not.
My answer is no, too, and I would put him 8th right now, as you just laid out there. Now, is it possible that he could end up being 6th and be ahead of both Jefferson and Restrepo? Yes, and you know what? If that does happen, that probably is pretty good news for the Titans.
Yep.
Or at least it could lead to good news, because I'm with you. I think he's got to really, really open eyes and take advantage of his opportunities. I don't know what the reps are all going to look like. So I think it's possible. And if that's the case, I know the Restrepo fans will be up in arms of like Burks making over Restrepo, but it might be a good thing. I'm just at this point, it's just hard for me to predict it. I would have to say he's not making the team.
So we'll continue the discussion on the receivers coming up next. Got a lot of your thoughts to get to. We'll get to the worst case scenario after going through the best case scenario with all the wide receivers as well. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan today as the Nashville Sounds take on Durham. Pregame beginning at 5:20, first pitch at 5:35. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at thegamenashville.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. Taking your thoughts on the Titans. So, Joe, we have gone through the best case scenario for the Titans wide receivers, and again, assuming health in this discussion. Let's go over the worst case scenario. And again, let's assume that everybody's healthy in this, because you could make the case that the actual worst case scenario for the Titans wide receivers is, well, Calvin Ridley gets hurt in week 1's out for the whole year. Tyler Lockett goes down in week 3. He's out for the whole year. And you got just a bunch of random dudes out there at wide receiver. That's too hard to sit there and really compute within the world of realism right now. So let's assume everybody's healthy. What's the worst case scenario? How bad could this receiving core, which again, Bill Barnwell has just ranked 32nd, how bad could it be for the Titans this year?
Pretty bad. I mean, it could be pretty freaking
It could
bad.
be pretty awful.
Yeah, I mean, like, if is Lockett, is this going to be a second straight year of a Tyler coming in here? Previously excellent Tyler, who just is at the end of the rope coming to Nashville. There's one. Yeah, because I think with any prediction, Robbie, like you just touched on, you just assume health. You have to assume health in all these predictions, even though we all know that there won't be health. But like, how you gonna, you have to assume health and judge teams on health. So Lockett's cashed, Jefferson's cashed. Neither of the rookies is ready / just isn't good enough. Ridley, I mean, I still think even in a worst case scenario, I think Ridley's going to produce, because like it's who else is going to, like, they're going to be behind in games. There's going to be probably some empty calories in some fourth quarters and things like that. So Ridley will still, but a sub 1,000-yard year, that's a part of a worst case scenario for him too.
There's a chance that beyond Ridley, this receiving core could be extremely dry. Like, I mean, look, somebody's going to have to catch some passes. I understand that. Like, somebody's going to have to catch the ball out there beyond Calvin Ridley. But there is absolutely a scenario where neither one of the rookies, and I guess you could put all three of them in there if you're of the belief that Xavier Restrepo is going to come in and, be 1,600-yard guy. But there's a chance that none of the rookies are ready, and they're not able to be productive to start, which, by the way, happens sometimes in the NFL with rookie receivers. Tyler Lockett continues a downward trend, and he just kind of falls off the cliff at age 33, and he's just not a threat. He can't get open. He can't get separation anymore. Like, that's a possibility there. So I'm with you on the Ridley front. Like, based on the way the receiving core is kind of structured around him, like, his floor, I think, if he's healthy, is pretty high. Like, I don't think you're going to be talking about Calvin Ridley with 400 yards or anything this year. If he's healthy, he's going to approach 1,000 yards. But what's beyond him? Like, that's where it starts to, like, there's a lot of, I think, we keep coming back to the word hope a lot, talking about Titans and Predators around here. There's a lot of hope right now with the wide receiving core outside of Calvin Ridley that certain things are going to happen where they're good enough at wide receiver. And that's a scary place to be if you're trying to build a football team.
Yeah, no doubt. What if Cam Ward and Restrepo get in a fight and aren't best friends anymore? Throw that into the
that could be a part of it.
Throw that into the worst case scenario. Texter says, why the hell are the Titans not trading for Terry McLaurin right now? If I were GM, that deal would be done already. This team is terrible. The receivers are atrocious.
Well, because Washington doesn't want to trade Terry McLaurin. That's why. I mean,
that'd be one roadblock.
Now, they may get there at some point. We talked about the McLaurin situation to begin the show. Like, I wouldn't put a whole lot of attention to it until training camp comes around and he's actually missing practice. If that happens, well, then maybe it does start to destabilize at that point. But I doubt very seriously Washington is sitting here right now being like, you know what we'd really like to do right now? We'd really like to trade away our best wide receiver. That would be something we'd like to do. I don't think that's happening. So that would be why. Like, I'm sure that with the contract situation being what it is, I have no doubt that there have been some general managers around the league, Joe, that have made the call to Washington and been like, hey, so what's going on? You guys going to put Terry McLaurin on the block? I guarantee you that's happened. But I doubt very seriously Washington is sitting here on July the 10th being like, yep, let's trade him.
I'll be extremely surprised if in the end They don't end up paying him because because of the success last year. You can't. It's not like you're just replacing him with Debo, right? Like you need both. And when you have the year like you had last year, yeah, you got a lot of years with Jaden Daniels, and that's the bottom line. Like the future is bright, but you're also, you're in a what you hope is a division competition with the defending Super Bowl champs. You beat the best team in the NFL last year on their field in the playoffs, in an incredible environment. Like you don't mess this up. It'll go for a while, but he'll be a commander this season.
Yeah. So, I mean, we talked about the receiving, the two rookie receivers in the fourth round, Io Manor and DK. I said it, and I'm texting back with Corey Curtis right now. He's saying, like, if they got over 600, he would think that that's like combined. That would be really good because, as he points out, if they're getting over 600, it's probably going to be like one guy at 500 and another guy at about $150. Right. Like, it's probably what it's going to end up being at that point. So that goes back to would you rather see one of them pop rather than just this like even split down the middle, and both of them you're like, I don't really know what they are at the end of the year. I mean, the worst case scenario for those two is they're just not very good, right? Like maybe they're not, fourth round success stories do happen, Joe. Like we've got one on our station and Derek Mason, who's a pretty darn good pick in the fourth round. Amon-Ra St. Brown's been pretty darn good for Detroit as a fourth round pick. So it happens in the league. You can find throughout the history of the NFL. I mean, it's littered with good receivers that have gone in the fourth round. There are also a lot of receivers that you can take in the fourth round that were absolutely terrible and never really did anything in the NFL. Look at Des Fitzpatrick, who, by the way, you took in the fourth round. Didn't do much in the NFL, right? So didn't even make your team the first year after you drafted him. So that's not an impossibility here with both of these guys that you just took, even though I know that a lot of Titans fans are very excited about him. And I am too. Like, I've got some hope that those guys could turn out to be good, but it's by no means a guarantee that one of those two guys is just going to come in and immediately be ready to go.
Right. And look, if neither of them pans out, if both of them are just struggling to get on the field this year, I know they're just rookies, but with such opportunity, I think that will say something. And this is an early indicator of Mike Bergonzi and this new front office structure. You certainly hope that you didn't miss on both of those guys. Yeah. I'll be surprised if Io Manor doesn't at least become a guy who gets regular snaps and has some production.
Serviceable.
That will, yeah. And of course, you hope for more than that for sure. But if that's at least not the case, that'll be a big surprise to me.
I tell you what, we talked about best case scenario for all the receiving core. I tell you what the real best case scenario is. The best case scenario is that Cam Ward is so good that he elevates everybody around him, right? And that doesn't mean that, Io Manor is going to have 1,000 yards or anything. But the best case scenario is you get to the end of the year and you're like, good Lord, look at how good the quarterback was. Imagine how good he could be if you got him some more help at wide receiver. That to me is probably the best case scenario at the end of the year from a franchise standpoint of, oh my goodness, look at how good Cam Ward was. Imagine how good he could be if you go get him some help.
Well, exactly. Like Caleb says in the YouTube chat, if Io Manor gets 550 or whatever, some of these numbers are hit, and the Ward's probably balling out. So, I mean, that's he's still he dictates as much as anyone some of the success. Yes, could he be good? We can see that he's good, and he just doesn't have help, and it's like Ridley and the Ridleyettes, and they're just all bad. Yes, but if he's what the Titans hope he can be or is getting there this year, that's got to translate into some production for people other than Ridley, I would think.
We have a lot of people on the text line asking if Treylon Burks could make the transition to tight end. We have had a receiver on our show this week that has made the transition to tight end, so it does happen. So I'm not going to totally dismiss the question, but I would doubt that is going to be within the cards for Treylon Burks. I know he's got good size to him. How well can he block? I would also point out, we mentioned Jordan Matthews that we had on the show earlier this week, going from wide receiver to tight end. He also basically took a year off to learn how to play tight end and the blocking and everything that goes with that. So it's not just as simple as, hey, we don't really have a spot for you at wide receiver, but get over there and start playing tight end if you're Treylon Burks.
Yeah, and Jordan Matthews, he's trying. He's trying to make it in the league as a tight end.
Right.
What's the most successful example of that in NFL history? There have definitely been some transitions from receiver to tight end, but I'm trying to think of one that was really successful.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to really dig in on that.
Devin Funchess was like a
Yeah.
hybrid guy, but he came in as like a hybrid guy with the Panthers out of Michigan. So yeah, I don't think that's realistic for Traylon Burks. Yes, he's a big body receiver. I don't think he's a guy who would ever be someone you could put in line and get anything from in that way.
615-737-1025, our phone number. A couple weeks out from training camp, what is the number one thing that we want to see early in camp from Cam Ward? We'll get into that coming up next. Take your thoughts in the meantime, 615-737-1025. This fall, live at the Pinnacle at Nashville Yards, Tim McGraw will be performing at Trinitix's Rock the Cradle. This event sure to be a great time, celebrating a great cause. Proceeds from the event will support newborns and moms at Ascension St. Thomas Midtown. You can get your tickets now at rockthecradlenashville.org. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in. Final segment of the day. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar here with you on this Thursday morning. Less than 2 weeks away from training camp opening up. Matter of fact, 2 weeks as of yesterday is when they'll be out there on the field. So we are getting there, Joe Rexrode. Cam Ward, what is one thing you'll be looking for early in camp that you want to see? Whether it's taking care of the football, whether it's explosive plays down the field, whether it's busting out of the pocket and extending plays. What's the number one thing you want to see early on in camp from Cam Ward, Joe, that will indicate to you that he is on a trajectory and on a path to success early?
Well, I would say you want to see some spectacular throws. You want to see consistently throwing strikes, which again I think is that's the thing people aren't talking about as much with him. I don't think they talk about it enough in general with quarterbacks. But you're throwing strikes consistently on the plays that you have to make routinely. Some spectacular throws. I'm not too worried about some picks in camp. I actually really do subscribe to the theory of this is where you can take some risks that you shouldn't in games. Like you were just going to have to see in games if he can not turn it over with devastating results like his predecessor did. But I also you don't want to see too many, right? You don't want it to become like where it's like, once again, he didn't see that the linebacker was dropping, or once again, he was late and, the corner was able to break back and pick up things like that. So you don't want to see too many of them. But if there's a risk taken here or there and it results in a pick, I mean, that's what camp is partially for, I believe, with quarterbacks.
Well, I remember, here's kind of how I come down on the turnover thing in camp. It's not totally meaningless. If you're throwing picks all the time in camp, that's probably not a great thing. But I remember how much of a big deal we made around here when Mariota, I think in his rookie year, he went a long time in training camp without throwing an interception. A long time without throwing an interception. And it was like, man, look at this guy. He's just not throwing interceptions at all. And then it didn't really mean much when the regular season came around. So again, I think there's limitations on what all that's going to mean in training camp. I mean, really what I'd like to see the first few days in camp is, could you make 3 or 4 just absolutely wow throws? Because I think a lot of that's what it's going to come down to with Cam Ward. Can you obviously taking care of the football is going to be important, and being able to recognize what you're seeing. I mean, there's so much that goes into playing quarterback that's going to determine the success or failure of what he's going to look like. And some of that's directly related to him. Frankly, some of that's not related to him, and it's with the situation around him too. But a lot of it is also going to be can he make some throws on a semi-consistent basis that you would expect somebody who was drafted number 1 overall in the NFL draft to make? So I would like to see the first few days of camp. Does he make 3 or 4 plays that just leave you shaking your head where you're like, wow, I can't believe that dude just made that play? Because that's what it needs to be with the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah. And there were a couple like that in the spring, but I agree. You definitely want to see some of those. David says, I want to see a natural baller with football instincts who makes good decisions, but not afraid to take chances. Another texter says, no bad plays like Levis. But the thing is, Levis in camp last year, I'm trying to remember. Sure, he threw some picks, but it wasn't some epidemic. And camp last year and what he did on the field the year before did not tell us, watch out, everybody. Here comes some bad Brett Favre type stuff, but without the Brett Favre good stuff. That just happened in the season.
He did throw the ball in the lake last year. I think I was in minicamp.
It did bounce, though.
It did bounce, though, as I pointed out. It wasn't an airmail into the lake, which would have been highly impressive.
Yeah, that would have been made Nuke LaLoosh blush if you actually did that. That's darn near impossible.
By the way, we keep calling it a lake. It's like a giant pond is really what it is.
Yes. Yeah, it's a swamp.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, look, I said it yesterday, Joe. We're going to overreact a lot to what Cam Ward does in camp, and I get it. It's part of it. That's just what it is this time of year. And I'm here to tell you, there are probably going to be some days in training camp where he just absolutely lights it up out there. And there are going to be some days where he does throw 3 picks, and you're like, geez, what in the world happened to Cam Ward today? Like, I would just encourage Titans fans to keep it even keel, and we'll see. Training camp's the time to work on some of those things. As we've gone through this hour, I'm not convinced that he's got the greatest supporting cast around him either. So a lot of it's going to be, kind of wait and see till you get to that Denver game of how equipped is this offense actually to move the football against what's going to be some pretty good tests on the defensive side of the ball that they're going up against in the first 2 weeks, certainly in Denver, and even coming back home against the Rams. The Rams are going to be good this year. So right out of the gate, you're going to get a couple of looks at some pretty good defenses in the NFL. So I think it's going to be up and down in training camp from Cam Ward. And frankly, I think if you expect anything, like if you expect some just linear process through training camp, by the time week 1 rolls around that he's going to be throwing for 350 against Denver, I don't know if you're living in the real world.
Right. And then Texter says, once you get to Denver, I don't want to see him throw 5 TDs the first game. We've seen that with Levis and Mario.
Yeah.
They went downhill. Now it was 4 for both of those, but point taken. I'm very confident in this prediction. Cam Ward's not going to have a 4 TD, 0 pick game at Denver against that defense on the road in his first game in the NFL. I will confidently predict that.
And if he sucks week 1, I may come in that Monday and be like, oh, thank God. Thank God. He just wasn't very good in week 1. Maybe this kid's got a chance.
I mean, you'd like to see like some good throws, but yeah, like the Titans losing by 17 and him having like 170 yards and a TD and 2 picks is very much on the table.
It is. I mean, look, I'm excited to see how he handles this. I tell you, the number one thing I'm looking for early beyond just the Cam Ward part, but probably like for the whole team, are Ridley and him on the same page early. Like when they get into camp, do him and Ridley immediately start to hit it off? Or is it another instance like it was last year where you get 3 weeks into camp and you're like, my God, are they ever going to connect? Like, they're going to get on the same page at any point down the field? That would be probably as big a sign to me as anything, is if him and Ridley immediately are connecting pretty well.
It's a big deal. And look, I mean, that's one of the things that I think we can kind of take so far from the stuff that often leads to nothing, is that there is something there. And we're not going to be sitting here all through August with both of those guys asked why they can't get on the same page, which definitely last year in camp played itself out to the Titans' detriment in September.
I did just have a buddy text me, and it's a good point. Like, is Cam Ward going to be out there with the ones in camp, or are they just going to do the quarterback rep thing again until like a week and a half into camp when they name a starter? Levis taking the first team reps coming up as camp starts?
I'll be shocked. I've kind of moved. I'm in the.
I'll be pissed.
Yeah, I think they're gonna. I think he'll get the 1 reps. I think, but yeah, it's a fair question. It's definitely one of those things. Like, guys, let's not overthink this here. Okay, we know who's starting the opener. So, as a rookie, he would need every possible rep you can give him.
Yeah, and I think that the Titans are going to handle it that way. I know, like in OTAs and minicamp, you can go through that song and dance of, the quarterbacks are going to get as many reps as they earn and all this stuff, and that's great. I think you're going to see Cam Ward playing with the ones as training camp opens, and he's going to get a lot of reps. Now, what that ends up meaning for Will Levis and how they structure who's going to be the backup and all these things, I don't know. Like, is Will Levis going to be the backup? Is Brandon Allen going to be the backup? I have no idea how that's going to end up shaking out, but I'd be stunned if you don't see Cam Ward getting the ones immediately.
Will Levis will be traded in August. There's another prediction for you.
To who?
Jacksonville.
Okay. All right. I like it. Man, you imagine Will Levis down there reunited with Liam Cohen? What will that press conference look like from James Gladstone? We're hunting our guy again. We're back at it.
Say it, Will. Say it. And then we get the Levis hit a booming Duval. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. We're getting there. Training camp right around the corner, and Joe to be about 5 days into it, where I'm like, all right, enough of training camp. Let's get to some real football games around here. But we're still a ways away from that. That's going to do it for us today here on the program. Hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their Thursday. We'll be back 6 a.m. tomorrow. Jason Big Joe Show coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.